Brian Keith was an illustrious American actor with a career that spanned 7 decades. Few actors have ever had the celebrated career that he enjoyed. He starred in at least 42 feature films and 8 TV shows. Throughout his esteemed career, he garnered many awards and accolades. The critics loved him, but most of all, audiences viewed him as an extended member of their own families. He may be best known for his role as Uncle Bill Davis in CBS's immensely popular sitcom Family Affair, where he played the part of a well-to-do bachelor that comes to the aid of his brother's orphaned children following a tragic accident. Although his character was at first reluctant to take the children in, he quickly grows to love them as his own. As he was a man with no children of his own, he lacked experience in child raising. The show chronicled the journey of Brian Keith's character, learning the ins and outs of what it means to be a family man. Family Affair was a tremendous success, mostly because of its astounding casting. Brian Keith lured in viewers with his gruff yet lovable persona. As we sat in our living rooms each week, we saw him acquire family values and life skills that convinced us of his commitment to those children. But does the man behind the character have the same family values? You may be surprised by how actor Brian Keith lived his life. Make sure to stick around until the end of the video to learn about the heartbreaking way that his life came to an end. Factsverse presents Family Affair's Brian Keith truly was a family man. Before we take a look at this television icon, click the like button if you're a fan of Family Affair. And if you want to see more videos like this, be sure to subscribe to the channel and click the notification bell. One of the reasons Brian Keith shined in his family-oriented roles, such as Family Affair and the classic Disney film The Parent Trap, where he played the father of the 2 twin girls, both played by a young Haley Mills, was that he was drawing upon familiarity to get into character. It wasn't a stretch for him to step into his roles. He always possessed those fatherly qualities. Some stars marry their career. It consumes their lives and is the main priority they always put first. It's not uncommon to hear of folks in showbiz with failing marriages and estranged children. Making it in the entertainment industry takes a substantial amount of time and energy. Balancing a career and family isn't always the easiest task to undertake. Jeffrey Mark, a pop culture historian that's sometimes referred to by critics as a walking encyclopedia of show business history, says of Brian, his heart was more about his family and his kids, the people he loved, and the things he got to do with them. He goes on to reveal that he wasn't as attached to his stardom as others in the industry. He saw the money he made in the industry as only a means to an end, a way to provide for his family and to share with them the things he loved. Some actors disregard their personal life to find success, while others end up taking on a lot of lackluster and unfulfilling work just to pay the bills. Brian Keith wasn't attached to finding the absolute perfect work. His ego remained in check enough for him to realize that he needed to work for the paycheck and take the roles that came his way while maintaining a modicum of integrity. Brian Keith was born on November 14, 1921, in the town of Bayonne, New Jersey, which happens to be the same hometown of George R.R. Martin. This cultural hub was a thriving community for the arts. His parents, Robert Keith and Helena Shipman, each had respectable careers as actors. It was on a tour of the play 3 Wise Fools that little Brian came into the world. Brian's parents' marriage had been on the rocks for a while before they divorced when he was only 2. His father moved to Hollywood to pursue his dream of being an actor and a writer, while his mother Helena stayed on the Eastern Seaboard continuing to perform on stage. It was in this period of transition he landed his first credited role on the 1924 silent film Pied Piper Malone, directed by Alfred E. Green, a comedy drama that was typical of the era. He went to live with his mother on Long Island following the filming, where his grandmother became a defining fixture of his childhood. She would teach him how to read, even egging him on to delve into classics outside his reading level. She helped polish young Brian into a socially aware and intellectually advanced young man. His mother would take Brian to her shows she performed in, and he would patiently wait in the dressing room while she would work hard to pay the bills. It was likely this exposure at an early age to the entertainment industry that made it seem less appealing to Brian Keith. It would take him a little more convincing before he would hit the stage. When he was young, he didn't want to simply follow in his parents' footsteps. Rather, he set his sights on the Merchant Marine Academy. But in order to get in, he had to pass some academic evaluations. And turns out math wasn't his strong suit. In an interview with the Sun Bulletin in 1966, he remarked that algebra made me a star. Each time he would take an evaluation, he would wind up with a failing grade. Every attempt, he would repeat the courses, it would be the same story. So it was goodbye Navy career, he declared. Although he never got a chance to chase his dream of a life at sea, he did enlist in the Marine Corps after graduating high school in 1939. He served as an air gunner in World War II and became a decorated war hero, receiving an Air Medal for his service in the Solomon Islands in 1943. Brian's father would remarry a young Hollywood actress named Peg Entwistle, making her his new stepmother. She was only 24 when darkness crept over her life. She was in LA working on a film in 1932 when her depression got the better of her. She climbed high up to the top of the famed Hollywoodland sign and perched upon the letter H before taking a fatal plunge to her death. A woman walking the next morning just below the sign found her purse and a shoe. She opened the purse to find a suicide note explaining her morbid decision, and her body was subsequently found in a ravine below. This tragic event no doubt took a toll on the psyche of young Brian, who was just north of 10 years old at the time of her death. It was during the time after the war that Brian began to take an interest in acting again. He cashed in on his military benefits and took some acting courses and wound up being recruited for a lead role in the stage play Mr. Roberts. He stuck with it and spent several years performing on Broadway. He had high hopes of starring in his first Hollywood flick alongside bombshell Jennifer Jones in a romantic drama that was axed in pre-production. When that failed to pan out, he landed his first big-screen role in the 1953 film Arrowhead, where he worked alongside Hollywood legend Charlton Heston. To his bewilderment, he would be typecast for action films for the next few years, starring in films like 1955's The Violent Men and 1959's The Young Philadelphians. It was during this formative time in his career he found himself on the small screen for the first time, appearing on the show Crusader, which ran from 1955 to 1956. Despite starring in it, he didn't care much for the show, which followed Brian's character Matt Anders defending the world from injustice and evil during the Cold War. He took the part to pay the bills and keep his children fed. He didn't feel much of a heart connection to it. It was this sort of prioritizing of the needs of his family despite having to pay his dues in an unfulfilling role that highlighted his family values. He knew his family always had to come first, no matter what, even if that meant sucking it up and taking the cruddy part no one else wanted. Brian wouldn't have to take less than stellar roles for long. In 1960, he was cast as Dave Blassingame, the drifter cowboy from the Wild West in the short-lived NBC show The Westerner, a genre-pushing show that was catered towards a highbrow audience and wasn't afraid to take a few risks. The show only saw one season and suffered from network pushback when it explored controversial themes. Brian was proud the show wouldn't compromise just to make a few bucks. It remained true to his spirit and is still remembered today as being one of the finest of its genre for its time. The Westerner propelled Brian's career with an added boost, entering into a new decade. The 60s would be good to Brian Keith. He would star in 18 full-length films, including The Russians Are Coming, The Russians Are Coming in 1966 as Police Chief Maddox, and in the 1967 drama Reflections in a Golden Eye, which cast him alongside legend Marlon Brando. Perhaps his biggest cinematic credit of the 60s was Disney's 1961 classic family film, The Parent Trap. He attributes this role as being a contributing factor for him breaking free from westerns and action films. Well, at least for a little while, because soon enough he would be back at it again in a string of macho muscle action flicks which he had a notable disdain for. He loved parts that allowed him to be himself, or at least some familiar version of himself. What made The Parent Trap and Family Affair such enjoyable roles for him was the fact he could tap into his true essence and bring to the screen a portrait of a loving family man, something he felt a strong connection to. It was in 1966 that Brian Keith took on his most iconic role as Uncle Bill Davis. It was as this character he truly felt in his element, raising the 3 orphan children of his brother who died suddenly in a horrific car accident, alongside his butler, Mr. Giles French, at his luxury Manhattan apartment. Brian and the kids, played by Kathy Garver and Johnny Whitaker respectively, captured the hearts of audiences for over 130 episodes, spanning the show's 5 seasons. We laughed, we cried, and we grew a little, much the same as Uncle Bill did, as he learned what the word family truly meant through a series that was a roller coaster ride of warm and fuzzy moments, mixed in with engaging drama and lots of laughs. It may not have been the greatest show ever on TV, but it was one that was definitive of a generation of television amid a world in a state of cultural flux. As the years went by and Brian Keith raised a family of his own with his wife Victoria Young, he still found time to remain friends with his Family Affair co-star children. But in 1997, tragedy struck his life again. His daughter Daisy took her own life in suicide. Coupled with a major financial setback earlier in the year, Brian encountered some very difficult times. Before his death, Keith called his old co-stars Kathy and John to let them know about what he was about to do. He wanted to say goodbye and let them know he cared about them. He didn't want them to find out about his death in the newspaper. He wasn't a man suffering from mental disorder. He was just a man that had lost his will to live when his family wasn't there beside him anymore. Sadly, he took his own life with a self-inflicted gunshot. He may have passed away in a time of doleful distress, but one thing can be certain. Brian Keith was always a family man, even up to the very end. That wraps up our look at the life of Brian Keith, a family man through and through. Let us know in the comments what you think his best role was. Was it Uncle Bill in Family Affair, or did he shine brighter in The Parent Trap? If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe to Factsverse for more videos like this.